So I'll try not to be redundant because a lot of my background slides have already been presented. So I'm going to focus distinctly and specifically on the economics with regards to transcatheter aortic valve replacement and the role that cerebral embolic protection would play in those economics. So these are my disclosures. So several of these discussants have talked about the VARC2 disabling stroke prevalence and what that portends with regards to mortality. And I just wanted to focus on basically the strain of a stroke with regards to the ability to function independently, enjoy your life, etc. So there is a broad scale economic impact from having this event. Stroke is definitely underreported in TAVR studies, and this slide has been shown a couple of times, but basically what I'll focus on is that neurologic identified deficits and worsening neurocognition with new brain MRI lesions and or higher lesion volume is something that really deserves mentioning. Dr. Moses already mentioned a lot of this, and again, I'm just going to focus on the greater the volume of diffusion weight imaging lesions seen on MRI, the greater the long-term risk of cognitive dysfunction and long-term dementia. And every step of a transcatheter aortic valve replacement procedure can lead to this burden and put patients in jeopardy of these types of long-term consequences. When we look at MOCA scores, basically patients who underwent TAVR without embolic protection demonstrate a reduction, and while patients who undergo TAVR with the TriGuard device demonstrate improved scores on cognition and memory testing. Again, this has a significant economic impact. So while a disabling stroke by definition leads to a decrease in patients' quality of life, brain emboli have been shown to lead to cognitive impairment. Cognitive impairment and impaired memory are amongst the strongest correlates of decreased quality of life in post-stroke patients. Mild cognitive impairment is a precursor to dementia, and what can be kind of justified from all of this is that mild cognitive impairment itself carries with it a significant decrease in quality of life. That's the denominator of cost effectiveness. So patients with mild cognitive impairment demonstrate worse physical and social functioning, worse mental health states, and are less functionally independent. There have been several analyses done in this area with regards to the impact of cerebral embolic lesions post-TAVR. Patients who have this type of sequelae are more likely to exhibit post-procedure delirium. This will increase both post-procedure and long-term mortality and extend your length of stay in the hospital, resulting in several estimates of added cost. If you reduce brain emboli post-TAVR, hypothetically, you could reduce the risk of post-procedure delirium and thus decrease post-TAVR length of stay and overall costs. There are several different venues that this is felt to be impactful. In the index hospitalization, acute ischemic strokes in the setting of TAVR could add more than $25,000. And this was a decision analytic model that used one kind of estimate of this, but this is what it could be in the setting of an especially complicated stroke. After discharge, it doesn't stop. Long-term and ischemic stroke with moderate disability can increase annual healthcare costs by up to $60,000 with accrual based on longevity. If you think about it from a provider economic standpoint, this will result in deductions from the fee-for-service revenue stream that you have. And so if you discharge a patient and you use these ancillary services and you get them out of the hospital quickly, you will take a hit because Medicare is not going to double pay. And so basically, a lot of your reimbursement is going to go to the skilled nursing facility or home health care as a result of the post-acute care transfer policy. Longer term, transitioning from mild cognitive impairment to dementia has been shown to add an annual excess cost of $6,000 per patient. If we look at clinical trials, we can see the partner, this is a very nice analysis that was done by Suzanne Arnold and colleagues, that a major stroke actually contributed about $16,000 in cost to a transcatheter aortic valve replacement. This was basically seen again in partner 2, but what I want to focus on with that population is that the margins between TAVR and surgical AVR are extraordinarily slim. And the cost effectiveness of transcatheter aortic valve replacement that's been studied in a societal kind of perspective are very, very dependent on the occurrence of these complications. I.e., if you sustain a stroke, TAVR does not become cost effective anymore. The financial margins with TAVR are so small, like I said, that even a single major cerebrovascular accident could lead to a TAVR program no longer being profitable. It could shut down programs. So the average contribution margin for TAVR in the United States is $11,000. If you sustain a few disabling strokes, you have longer-term hospitalizations, longer-term resource utilization, you can definitely feel that financial impact to the point of being financially insolvent. As payment for medical procedures will likely move towards an alternative payment model that includes costs for up to 90 days of post-procedure care, the effect of all types of strokes on the profitability of TAVR programs will become even more pronounced. And if we just look here, this is a very good white paper that kind of summarizes this. Right now, we're kind of in a fee-for-service landscape in the United States, and as we march into a future state, we're looking more at population-based payment models with a lot of emphasis on value-based healthcare. And when you get to that setting, having a stroke in a certain window of time, again, can be extremely debilitating to the program. Until recently, TAVR was only approved in the United States for patients with prohibitive or high risk for surgical AVR, and now we've extended this risk profile down to an intermediate risk for commercial use. Studies of TAVR in low-risk patients with essentially no major comorbidities are currently enrolling. If we look at population-level consequences of cerebral emboli and lower risk, if you expand TAVR to low-risk populations and you have heightened disease recognition, this could lead to 10 times the current number of patients being treated with TAVR. And if stroke risk is not mitigated, this then becomes an exponential issue. You get a dramatic increase in healthcare costs associated with treating patients suffering stroke. Why? Because like Dr. Moses said, if you suffer a stroke at the age of 70 versus suffering a stroke at the age of 90, again, the outcomes there are dramatically different. And this whole idea of long-term cognitive impairment becomes that much more potent. So again, in high-risk versus low-risk patients, you're dealing with different ramifications. And in lower-risk patients, basically they're possibly still working, possibly still contributing to society, and if you knock that out, you have economic ramifications that don't just affect the patient, affect society as on a broader scale. And the impact across perspectives is felt. So why complete embolic protection? In each of these perspectives, there's a very good argument. And so just to be brief, when we're looking at cost effectiveness, basically we need to look at every single perspective that would adjudicate that from the standpoint of a provider, which is what I'm going to look at in just a moment. Again, in fee-for-service or per episode care, the potential reduction in incidence of an economically devastating consequence is very important. And in a bundled payment ACO model, potential avoidance of long-term economic burden is extraordinarily important. And complete embolic protection, I believe, satisfies this. If we look at the data that I have at Pinnacle Health Cardiovascular Institute, my own hospital, and if I look at a regular TAVR, a TAVR with paravalvular leak, a TAVR with stroke, a TAVR with a dual chamber pacemaker, a TAVR with a biventricular pacemaker, all of these actually have various cost ramifications. And again, looking at our baseline of about $36,000, a TAVR with a stroke adds about $5,000 on average to the inpatient stay as far as costs are concerned. If we then take that out to a 90-day window of time, the issue here is that basically, again, regular TAVR racks up an additional $2,000 of cost. This stroke patient only racked up an additional $1,400. This is a limitation of this form of economic analysis. This is why it's so important to take in every single perspective. The payer, the provider, society, etc. Because from a provider standpoint, I can only see what happens to them in the hospital. And so in the hospital or in my healthcare system, they're running up an additional cost of $1,000. Well, what is the stroke patient doing in 90 days that makes them so cheap? They're going to another setting of care where I'm not picking up the cost. And so if they're using skilled nursing facility resources, home health resources, these cost money, but they're not visible to me as a hospital provider. So these economic analyses that we would do in this setting cannot be myopic. They have to be all-encompassing, broadly reaching. What about the disposition, like I talked about? Acute care, rehab, skilled nursing facility, outpatient physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, all these things cost money and heighten the resource utilization. And then what about the opportunity costs? So it's been mentioned with regards to the patient that has a debilitating event, what kind of economic burden that sustains for the patient themselves. But what about the family members that are taking care of this patient? And so after they do get released from a skilled nursing facility, they've got adult children who are taking time off of work. That can have a real economic burden as well. Very difficult to assess what that is. So stroke rates in many of the randomized trials of TAVR are likely underestimated. Cerebral emboli are very common post-TAVR and may not lead to overt clinical signs of stroke, but are correlated with the development of cognitive impairment. Mild cognitive impairment is correlated with worsening quality of life and an increased risk of stroke, dementia, and death. Cerebral emboli are directly correlated with risk of post-TAVR delirium, which increases length of stay and healthcare costs. The upfront and long-term costs of stroke may lead to TAVR programs that are not focused on mitigating the risk of stroke to become unprofitable and non-sustainable. As TAVR becomes available to lower-risk populations of younger, functional, and independent patients, an overall stroke rate of 2 to 5%, which is probably an underestimate, period, may no longer be acceptable. The combination of TAVR and complete embolic protection with TriGuard has been shown to decrease the risk of stroke, the number of embolic lesions post-TAVR MRI, and improve cognitive functioning post-TAVR. As TAVR continues to expand to low-risk patients, it will be important to consider the use of complete embolic protection to prevent the short and long-term consequences of cerebral embolization, and to ensure that TAVR is performed in the safest possible environment with respect to the economic adjudication of this particular